This is part 2 of a 2-part video. If you haven't seen the first part, you might want to go do that before watching this. Link is in the description. Radiator Stories. I'm sure I mispronounced that. This game seems okay, but I just couldn't get into it. The characters aren't bad, but they're a bit generic, and the combat consists of yet another one of these awkward hybrid systems, so I didn't play for long. Rogue Galaxy. The game has an interesting enough premise, but once again the core combat was one of these hybrid systems that I just don't care for. Shadow Hearts 2. You know, the thing that disappoints me about this game the most is that I let myself get my hopes up. Yes, I liked Shadow Hearts, but I liked it despite its flaws, not because of them. Shadow Hearts worked because it had this unique, gothic, quirky charm about it that let you overlook the problems with the story and world building. But when it comes to a sequel, one that comes out several years later, you would hope that there would be at least some improvement when it comes to the storytelling and world building. Sadly, this did not happen. The game still has the same convoluted and utterly nonsensical type of narrative that its predecessor had, and the improved graphics and higher production value just make it more apparent and jarring how silly and inane the story really is. Gameplay-wise, it's pretty much the same, but seeing how I found myself completely and utterly uninvested in the story or characters, the gameplay was not sufficient to keep me playing for long. Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga. While I didn't play any of the Persona games until 2020, I was vaguely aware of the Shin Megami Tensei series. There was one for the DS that I played years ago, and I remember having a reasonably good time with it. So since the Persona games reminded me of their existence, I figured I'd try some of the Shin Megami Tensei games for the PS2. Starting with Digital Devil Saga. Taking place in what appears to be a sci-fi setting, the main characters belong to a group called Embryon, and during a skirmish with an opposing group, they all become infected with some kind of demonic virus and transform into monsters. They must then try to understand their new powers and figure out what's going on. The story is somewhat interesting, and the gameplay is standard, normal turn-based combat, and not some hideous hybrid mess, so that's nice. But while the game seems decent, it didn't really grab me. Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. This is another Shin Megami Tensei game, and while I didn't play it for very long, I did stick with it a bit longer than Digital Devil Saga. For one, I think that the premise is a bit more intriguing. You play as a silent protagonist, and you arrive in Tokyo just in time to witness the entire world being destroyed and then remade into a demon-filled wasteland. Well, the game says the entire world was destroyed, but based on what was shown, it could just be Tokyo. It's not entirely clear. In any case, the main character becomes a demon and must fight his way through hordes of demons and cooperate with some of them in order to survive in this strange new world and try to figure out what's going on. It's an interesting premise with a grim, gothic edge to it, and this is the sort of thing that Shadow Hearts should have been doing. If you're going to mix the real world with magical systems and creatures, then either those fantastical elements should have a major impact on the real world, or you have to give a very good reason as to why the fantastical elements are somehow hidden from the real world. Shadow Hearts does neither, instead trying for some nonsensical middle ground, which is why its story doesn't really work in my opinion. Nocturne of course opts for the former, and it does set up a lot of interesting mysteries. And the turn-based combat, like in Digital Devil Saga, is pretty good and doesn't needlessly try to reinvent the wheel. But while the gameplay is good, I still found myself getting bored with the turn-based combat, and while the story was intriguing, it wasn't intriguing enough for me to want to keep playing. I can tell this is a good game, and if my brain were wired in such a way that I could more readily enjoy JRPG games, I probably would have quite liked it. As is, while I can recommend others give it a try, it didn't work for me. Star Ocean Till the End of Time. This game wasn't bad, but it failed to grab me. For one thing, the opening drags on for way too long. I appreciate them doing some world building and slowly escalating the situation, but it takes a really long time for the game to get going and properly start. And even once it does get going, I didn't find myself all that invested. And the core combat is once again one of these clunky hybrid systems that tries to mesh real-time and turn-based combat together. It's not as bad as some of the other systems I've seen, but it's not that great either. Worth a look if you like JRPGs, but it wasn't for me. Suikoden 3. And while we're at it, I'll also just briefly touch on my thoughts on Suikoden 4 as well, since my thoughts on both games are pretty much the same. In both cases, the story is okay, the characters are okay, and the gameplay is okay, but nothing about them really interested me, nothing about them excited me, and nothing about them made me want to keep going. They're not bad, but they really did not pique my interest at all. Tales of the Abyss. Now this is a game that I actually really liked, and I probably would have stuck with it if the core combat was better. The premise is, a young man named Luke has been isolated inside of a mansion owned by a royal family for most of his life, when one day, through a freak accident, he and an intruder in the mansion end up flung a very long distance away from the mansion. Luke must try to find his way back home, and along the way he learns more about the outside world. It starts off as a fish out of water story, with Luke being a bit of a spoiled brat who has been sheltered most of his life. and as a result is pretty clueless about how things work. This constantly gets him into trouble, and Tyr, the woman accompanying him, often acts as the straight man, or straight woman I guess, to his antics. Luke can be pretty blunt and rude, but the game balances it just right so that his attitude and overall personality are still endearing rather than annoying. He kind of reminds me of Edward Elric if the asshole part of his personality was dialed way up, but he still had a heart of gold. The dynamic between the two main characters is very good and very entertaining, and as the game progresses you meet more likable and entertaining characters. In addition, the story and world building is very good and very intriguing, and I genuinely wanted to know what was going to happen next. The only problem is the combat. It once again is one of these awkward hybrid systems, but at first it was fairly simple and it came and went pretty quickly. The combat wasn't good, but it didn't get too much in the way of the good parts of the game, which is to say the story and characters. However, as the game went on, the combat slowly but surely began to change from being boring to being actively annoying. And when it became clear that I would have to slog through more and more of the tedious combat to get to the actually good parts of the game, I reluctantly called it quits. Still, the story and characters are really solid, so if you find that you can put up with or even enjoy the combat, this game is a must-play. Tales of Legendia. This is another game that seems okay, but didn't grab me. In fact, I could probably just say the same thing about Valkyrie Profile 2, Wild Arms 3, and Xenosaga Episode 1. So you know what? I will. They all seemed okay, but didn't grab me. Not much else I can think of to say, as Tales of Abyss was the last game on this list that actually somewhat interested me. So I think that's everything I have to say about the various JRPG games I tried for the PS2. Not sure if my rambling was of any interest to anyone, but I wanted to get it out there so at least I feel like something of value came out of all the time I spent trying to find a good JRPG for the PS2. Hopefully now I'll be able to get back into other genres I enjoy more, and find more games that have withstood the test of time. And I will say this, for the vast majority of these games I played, they do actually still hold up, and the reason I disliked them was because they just weren't for me, and not because they were outdated or badly designed. So what do you think? Have you played any of the games I covered? Did you like them, hate them, agree with me, disagree with me? Whatever you think, be sure to let me know in the comments below. If you like what I do, feel free to subscribe and follow me on Twitter. Thank you for watching, and I hope 2021 is a better year than 2020. Though admittedly, that's a pretty low bar to clear.
Hey guys, how's your health plan? Apparently it's great!